Some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits.
Chemistry tonight is electric.
As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, as Americans go to the polls, would Donald Trump or Kamala Harris be best for Britain? The bookies think it's in the bag. I'll be giving my fearless verdict in just a moment. It might get me cancelled. Could I care less? Is the world of showbiz responsible for the tragic death of Liam Payne? I'll be asking former reality stars and Britain's best-known political double act, Neil and Christine Hamilton. My Mark Meets guest has made an extraordinary film about Queen Elizabeth and King Charles and their interest in the supernatural and UFOs. I'll be uncovering some dark royal secrets before the end of the hour. And in an hour's time, in my Take at 10, a 17-year-old girl with suspected autism faces a 3-month ban from ladies amateur football for asking a biologically male opponent, "Are you a man?" Well, plot spoiler, he is a man. I'll be giving you more details of this shocking story at 10. You won't believe your ears. Plus, tonight's top pundits, business and geopolitics commentator, Dr. Roger Gewolb, author and academic, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, and broadcaster and model, Precious Mule. Harris or Trump, which is best for Britain? I'll be answering that question straight after the news headlines with the highly electable Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom are the wife of a Conservative councillor who was jailed for 31 months after an online rant about migrants on the day of the Southport attacks will reportedly appeal against her sentence. Lucy Connolly, who's married to West Northamptonshire councillor Raymond Connolly, said in a post on X at the end of July that mass deportation now set fire to all of the hotels with them inside. She went on to say that if that makes me racist, so be it. The 41-year-old former childminder was sentenced after pleading guilty to a charge of inciting racial hatred. Well, the Mail Online has reported that Connolly's husband said she plans to appeal against that sentence, which he believes was political. In other news, Zayn Malik has announced he'll reschedule his US tour after the heartbreaking death of his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne. Meanwhile, Liam's sister says she doesn't feel this world was good enough or kind enough to him in a heartfelt tribute to her late brother. Liam's father has visited the hotel in Argentina where his son died as he read tributes left for the star outside of the Casa Sur Hotel. He was watched on by a crowd of mourners. Officials confirmed a search of the hotel that Liam had been staying in. They had found narcotics, alcohol and destroyed objects inside the room. Well, fans laid flowers, played songs and lit candles in tribute to Liam on the Kiel Wharf Bridge at Royal Albert Dock in Liverpool today. The Prime Minister has insisted that the government will stick to its manifesto pledges amid reports the Chancellor may extend a freeze on tax thresholds. The Financial Times writes Rachel Reeves could raise £7 billion in revenue if the freeze is extended until 2028. It could help plug some of the £40 billion gap in the Treasury's finances with a hope of avoiding a return to austerity. But critics say it'll break the Labour promise not to raise taxes. The King and Queen Camilla have begun a landmark tour of Australia that'll see them celebrate the country's people, culture and heritage. Now, a warning, some of the following footage contains flashing images. The couple's 6-day tour of the country started yesterday with a greeting on the runway by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. That visit includes a trip to the Australian War Memorial and the Sydney Opera House, plus Parliament. And the UK Foreign Secretary says British businesses are seeking stability and clarity with China. David Lammy is on a 2-day visit to the country. He also said the UK approach to China needs more diplomacy, not less. His Chinese counterpart says bilateral ties are at a new starting point and competition among major powers should not be the backdrop to the era. But David Lammy said by being there, the United Kingdom can also raise issues that it doesn't agree with.
There are areas where we can cooperate and collaborate with the Chinese, and I've been speaking to British businesses about how we do that. There are, of course, areas in which we will compete, and there are differences in areas in which we will challenge areas like Hong Kong, areas like Taiwan, areas like human rights in Xinjiang. We were able to have those conversations and raise difficult and challenging issues.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. Now it's back to Mark Dolan.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Is the media responsible for the tragic death of Liam Payne? Does King Charles believe in UFOs? Are weight loss jabs an accident waiting to happen? And how about this one? A 17-year-old female amateur footballer faces a 3-month ban for calling a man a man. Well, that's my take at 10. A busy 2 hours. Mark Dolan tonight is your perfect Saturday night in. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. We start with my big opinion. Presidential hopeful Kamala Harris is so bad that the confused Joe Biden, who gets lost on his way into his own house, may actually be a more compelling candidate for the White House. The queen of the confusing word salad, whose meandering speeches will see you happily reach your 5 a day, is pursuing the Keir Starmer strategy of saying as little as possible about what she would do if she achieved power. But we have her terrifying record in office. As border czar, Harris has presided over the biggest mass migration into America in 100 years, with over 11 million people having entered the country illegally since 2020. Whilst plenty of good people may be crossing into America to make a better life, it is a matter of official public record that thousands are convicted criminals, including murderers and suspected terrorists, and those are the immigrants who can be accounted for. This dystopian experiment in a borderless society, effectively communism if you think about it, has seen America's great cities like New York overwhelmed, with the brave Eric Adams, its Democratic mayor, saying we cannot take any more, the city is full. Does that sound familiar? The families of innocent Americans killed or hurt by migrants who crossed the southern border illegally have gone from being lifelong Democrat supporters to Trump loyalists overnight as they see the consequences of Harris's reckless policy. Presumably, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are flooding the country with economic dependents in order to ultimately give them the vote to create a one-party state and democratic administrations for the rest of time. Well, that is what I call voter fraud. That is what I call election interference. It's the same reason that in the state of California, not only do you not require a basic ID, a voter ID to cast your vote, it's illegal to ask an election officer to ask someone for their ID. Now, why would this law exist if it wasn't to cheat the result? There can be no other conclusion. Thanks to Biden and Harris's socialist policies, Democrat-controlled cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco and Seattle have enormous no-go areas with tent cities and shoplifting and open drug use the norm. Wokery is rife, with children at primary school being told they're racist if they've got the wrong skin colour, plus drag shows to sexualise youngsters and teach them that there are over 100 genders. They've had hyperinflation from money printing, eye-watering unsustainable debt, and mass migration has seen ordinary Americans' wages suppressed. Like so many left-wing political elites, the US Democratic Party have completely forgotten about the working class. Now, I'm no Donald Trump cheerleader. I'd much rather have the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, who pushed back on lockdowns and mask and vaccine tyranny during COVID. Or J.D. Vance, Trump's rags-to-riches vice presidential running mate, who is more articulate, disciplined and coherent than his boss. But Trump's record in office trumps Harris and Biden all day. He grew the economy by giving tax cuts to all Americans, including the lowest paid. There might be a lesson there. He's the first president in living memory that didn't start a single war whilst in office. And in the pursuit of peace, reached out to Vladimir Putin, President Xi of China, and he was the first US president to cross into North Korean soil to meet his, and I quote, good friend, Kim Jong-un, with whom he also shared affectionate written correspondence. You have to credit the guy for at least trying. Meanwhile, Kamala seems happy with a forever war in Ukraine, perhaps due to the Democratic Party's strong financial and political links with the military-industrial complex. Who knows? I'm just speculating. Trump's diplomatic efforts are in stark contrast to Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan and both the invasion of Ukraine and October the 7th, which happened on his and Kamala's watch. Now, Donald Trump is a deeply flawed human being with an unusual amber skin tone, narcissistic tendencies, and a long and checkered relationship with the truth. But Kamala Harris is hardly Little Miss Honesty, is she? Given the fact that she effectively lied to the American people and the world about the cognitive health of her boss, Joe Biden, facilitating the great fraud that was the Biden presidency and the idea that somehow this deeply confused man was running the country. Do me a favour. So why do I care so much about this election, and why should you? Well, because America's president is our president. The United States is the #1 economic, diplomatic and military ally of this country. If America falls, we fall with it. Trump is a million miles away from being perfect, of course. But politics is about tough choices. And it's Trump versus Harris on the ballot, which is what the Americans call a no-brainer. In fact, I think that he could be quite good second time round. His election would certainly annoy all of the right people. So, for his many flaws, Donald Trump is the least bad option for America, for Britain and the world. The future's bright. The future's orange. Let me have your reaction at gbnews.com/your say. But first, live in the studio, tonight's top pundit. I'm delighted to welcome business and geopolitics commentator Dr. Roger Giewolb, author and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and broadcaster and model Precious Muir. Lisa McKenzie, I'm deeply worried at the prospect of President Kamala Harris. What's your view?
I'll be honest, I'm probably deeply worried about both of them. Kamala Harris, I've noticed this week that Obama has been sort of reaching out to black men and saying, you know, Kamala Harris is one of us. She's...
Has he done more than just reach out to black men? Has he insulted black men?
Well, the thing is with Kamala Harris is when she was a public prosecutioner in California, she actually put more black men in prison. She actually increased the prison population, and she was very the African American community in that part of America was actually very damning of the way that she treated.
And a lot of those people were put in prison for the use of marijuana, which she will now legalise. And it's been alleged that some people spent longer in jail because of her approach to cases than they needed to. But now she's the friend of American black American men, Afro-Caribbean men.
But of course she isn't. But equally, you know, this is an election that I think no one wins from, actually. You know, I'm very mistrustful of Donald Trump and the sort of anti-abortion stuff as well, which is worrying.
Well, Precious, is Donald Trump the lesser of two evils?
I think a lot of people are saying that, you know, obviously that is what the case is here, is that it is a less of two evils. But in my regard, in that regard, I think Kamala Harris is the best of that. I mean, she is definitely going to have the better policies, and I think we need to make sure that that's what we're looking at. We're not looking about, you know, how you feel about Kamala Harris and what you think about Trump. The key point here is what does the policies mean to you as an individual? If the policies that they are saying at each individual candidate are saying, you go for the policies that make sense for you. If you don't like the leader, fair enough. But at the end of the day, the policies are important.
And you think that
I believe Kamala Harris' policies are extremely important to the future generation. Not only is she trying to get a handle on gun crime, right? She's making those rules and regulations stricter, and obviously taking away those guns, making it easier for the police system. There is also Roe versus Wade, where women actually have the rights to choose about abortion laws. There is a lot of good policies that she is offering. So if you don't like Kamala Harris, it's about the policies you're voting for that make sense for you for your future. And that's what we should be focusing on. Not the colour of the skin, not because she's a woman, not because he's a man. It's the policies you are voting for that makes the future better for us and the future generation.
Well, I agree with you. We should play the ball, not the man or the woman, Roger. But it's Kamala Harris's policies which concern me, and that's the main thrust of my big opinion tonight.
Well, she doesn't have any. I agree with what Precious says. She's a woman, she's black, she's Asian. Doesn't matter. That's not a qualification to be president. I do think, being both British and American, I can see the two sides. And the British, you know, they've got a lot more to understand about American politics. The Americans are worse looking at our politics. But Trump is not as you paint him. I think he's a lot more real, a lot more strategic. Kamala is as inauthentic as a 3.5-pound note.
Right.
She switches from one thing to another. She can't even dissemble. She can't even cover over things. She can't even answer questions properly. I don't think she thinks very well. She certainly doesn't argue very well. And her policy changes depending on whom she's talking to and what the subject is. I can only picture her in front of Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, any enemy, any aggression, she would collapse in a moment.
OK, well, listen, Mark Dolan tonight is the home of diverse opinion. My pundits are split. What do you think? Who would be the best president for the UK? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? gbnews.com/your say. It's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and the clock is ticking on getting your entry in as lines are closing on Friday. Make sure you don't miss out on your chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash. Here are the details you need.
Good luck.
Next up in the big story is the world of showbiz responsible for the death of Liam Payne. I'll be asking former reality stars and Britain's best-known political double act, Neil and Christine Hamilton, next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stefan Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, "You're the most swiped man on Tinder."
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you, and if you swipe to the right, that means you like that person.
Do you mind still being associated with that? It's a good thing.
Well, it made me who I am now, and I love sharing how I was successful, and now I'm like a dating expert.
What's your situation now? Are you with anyone? Are you still single, paying the bill?
So I'm seeing someone at the minute. Things are going well, and I'm a dating expert, so I'm always giving advice to people.
Does she know your title of most swiped?
Of course, who doesn't? It's quite hard. It's quite hard being the most swiped man on Tinder because you get a label on you. So I find it harder than anyone else, to be honest.
And where did you meet her? That's the big question.
At an event.
So not on Tinder?
Not on Tinder, ironically.
So for all that trouble online, it's actually a real life rendezvous. Which,
I mean, I have met people on Tinder in the past, and it has worked. Well, it didn't work, but yeah.
I need to know how to do the famous Stefan Smolder.
That camera is not a camera. That is your best friend, that's your lover. So you really smiles from the camera, so it goes like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Who Who would be best for Britain, President Kamala Harris or President Donald Trump? Well, Wayne says, Mark, your guess Precious is spot on. You should always vote for the person with the best policies for you and your country. I don't get people who stick with one party because that's who they've always voted for. That's why change never happens. Wayne, I completely agree with you, which is why I'm quite against the idea of party membership or any of that nonsense. Coral says, great to see Dr. Roger Gewolb on the panel. He talks a lot of sense. Mark, you're talking sense as always, says Charles. Well, Charles, thank you for that. I'm assuming that's the King. Humbled, you're good, sir. OK, folks, it's time for this. Yes, it's time for the big story, and tonight, as emotional tributes pour in following the tragic death of One Direction singer Liam Payne, is the world of showbiz responsible for his passing? Let's get the views of Britain's best-known political double act and two former stars of reality television, Neil and Christine Hamilton. Christine, you and Neil have been in the glare of publicity in the past. You've been followed by paparazzi, you've made front-page news, you've been door-stopped at home. Can you tell us how that feels?
Well, when it happened to us, we were in our 50s, let's be honest. And I think that's 100% different to if it happens to you when you are a teenager. And when you're 50, you are mature. You know by then that stuff happens. Quite a lot of stuff had already happened to us, and this was just the latest thing. So I think it's completely different when you're a utterly mature adult, when you have to deal with this sort of pressure, than when you're a youngster. And I think we all think, when we are 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, we all think we're incredibly... If there are any youngsters watching now of that age, they will think that they are incredibly grown up. But I promise you, you are relatively immature. You are not able to make rational decisions necessarily. And if something hits you like a tsunami, which of course, Payne, there is a very high likelihood that you can go off the rails.
Most definitely. Unfortunately, your broadband connection has gone off the rails slightly, Christine, but we will try to get that line fixed. So whilst we're having a look at that, Neil, success too early in life, whether it's politics or showbiz, is something of a curse rather than a blessing, isn't it?
Well, of course, it's maybe difficult for you to cope with. Every individual is different, but I personally have some difficulty in being too sympathetic. The potential upside of massive fame in the music business is enormous. And we're dealing with an adult here who is 31 years old. And yes, he had all sorts of issues, evidently with drugs and so on. But I don't want to be too censorious about this, but I do think that ultimately we have to take responsibility for our own decisions. Blame on external factors and other people all the time. So yes, obviously I've got a massive sympathy for Liam Payne's family and their loss, but nevertheless, it's hardly a secret what's gone on in the world of showbiz at that level over the last 50 years. And I'm afraid to say that if you mess around with drugs and you abuse alcohol, then these kinds of consequences may not be the inevitable conclusion, but there's a high chance that what's happened will happen to you. So you're just functional about things. And if you can't be, then I'm afraid it isn't anybody else's fault, it's your fault.
Christine, go on, Christine.
Well, I was going to say the problem is that, as Neil said, he was now 31, absolutely old enough to take responsibility for your own actions. But as I understand it, with drugs, once you are hooked, it's too late. And I don't know how old he was when he first started taking drugs. You cannot blame the music industry for an adult taking their own decisions in life. It was his decision to take the drink. It was his decision to take the drugs. Now, you may say that he was led to that, or he was let down by friends, or he had friends, he had family, who I'm sure they did try and help him. And apparently, as I where celebrities go. But I do think there is a response
Now, apologies, Christine, we're having big problems with the line. So what we'll do is we will get the views of our top pundits tonight. I'm delighted to say that Roger Gewolb is with us, Lisa McKenzie and Precious Muir. There you go, the Hamiltons cut off in their prime. But, Roger, do you think that the world of showbiz has some responsibility for the plight of individuals like Liam Payne and perhaps Caroline Flack, the ITV presenter, who also took her life in tragic circumstances a few years ago?
I think it's part of every show business celebrity. The younger they are, the quicker their ascension to fame. It's very hard to handle. So the industry has some responsibility in the same way that all of show business and media is very fickle, and some people can't cope with it. So yes, there's responsibility there, but I think there are also many groups, institutions, and people in the industry that provide tremendous help and support. And you just need to know what the individual circumstances are. The fact that there were narcotics and alcohol and destroyed objects doesn't bode well. You can't pin that on the industry.
No, well, indeed, and of course that was the main point that Neil Hamilton made, was about sort of self-responsibility. The 31-year-old man, of course, very much responsible for his own life at this stage. But Precious, is it wrong to play the blame game at this stage?
I think it definitely is. I think we have to be very mindful of what we say, because obviously he was a young man and he got into the industry very young. So he didn't live a normal life, as it were. And I've experienced this lifestyle since I was 18. So I understand it very much so, that, you know, you are around the entertainment industry, you're exposed to so much so soon. You can't really navigate through it because you're not familiar. When you do get familiar, you may have been caught up in something that you can't stop, i.e. drugs. You know, you're exposed to this very early. You may have then become somebody who dabbles in it, and then you don't really have the support system around you, and then you don't really tell anybody that you're dealing with this stuff. So it starts to build up. And so obviously all of this has built up. He's dealing with this, you know, mentally and physically, and he probably didn't have anyone around him at the time. And this is where the incident led to. And it's very sad, because we need to give the family time to grieve. I mean, I saw a clip online that really disturbed me. The father got out of the car. He's walking towards the area to go and, you know, pick up his child's belongings. And he's just... paparazzi is just jumping on his back, and they're just really just not giving any respect to the family right now. I mean, it's a lot to deal with.
Yes, indeed. Lisa, you work in higher education, and so you're around, you know, 18-year-olds. Can you imagine, you know, some of your students becoming global superstars?
No, I couldn't. I could never imagine, you know, how they would deal with that, and especially in an industry that relies so much on money and the amount of money they can earn off an individual person. You know, and this is not a new story, is it? You know, we think about Judy Garland, Anna Nicole Smith. You know, there has been a number of men and women that has sort of suffered at the altar of this sort of fame.
Yeah, most definitely. Very well put. Well, listen, folks, it is a tragic story. We will return to it in the papers. I know that Roger and Precious have more to say on that. But, folks, a lot more to come. As the first suspected death from weight loss injections in Britain is revealed, are these jabs a death trap? I'll be asking one of the country's leading cosmetic experts, who's deeply worried. She's in the studio. She joins me next.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As the first suspected death from unlicensed weight loss jabs rocks Britain, are they a miracle cure or a disaster waiting to happen? Well, I'm delighted to say that health and beauty expert Vanessa Lana Brown joins me in the studio. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. First of all, what is your view of these weight loss jabs? Things like Wegovy and Ozempic.
Yes, and there's a new one called Manjaro as well, which is available.
I thought it was a mountain.
Yes, it does sound like Kilimanjaro.
Yeah,
congrats.
But anyway, these are miracle cures. But is it a miracle in
Absolutely
syringe?
not. I mean, they were designed predominantly for overweight and obese patients, so that's typically a BMI of 30 plus. However, what's happening now is people are getting access to them through traditional methods, which needs to be through prescription-only medication. So you need to go see either a prescribing doctor or a prescribing nurse or a prescribing pharmacist in order to have access to that medication. I think one of the issues with it at the moment in the UK is there's a lot of off-licence versions of it available that I see all the time on Facebook, in these dodgy Facebook groups, people buying them and they look like insulin syringes. That's never how it should come. It should come in a preloaded pen and your doctor should talk you through how to use it. So I do think that there is a place for them with the overweight individuals, but I think if they get into the hands of the wrong people, they can cause long-term medical implications.
Indeed, and the problem is that they're quite costly, these medications, aren't they? I mean, it could be upwards of £1,000 a month to prescribe someone with Ozempic. So naturally, they've got a black market value and people just want to go online and buy direct.
Yes, exactly. And there's also a big supply and demand issue with them in the UK. There's a high demand for them, very little supply. So that's why people look at other places in order to have access to them. For example, in our clinic, we offer them for around like £200 per month.
Right.
And they're all supervised by a private GP.
OK, well, that's interesting. What's your appraisal of the medication itself? Is it effective? Does it help you lose weight in the right way? Does it stay off?
Again, because it's very new, there hasn't been enough long-term research carried out on the medication. However, there has been new data that has come out that has shown that it can reduce things like inflammation in the body. It can help, and obviously if you reduce inflammation, then you're going to reduce the risk of disease later on in life. So that's new data that is coming out. And obviously they are FDA approved, so they've been through rigorous clinical trials before they become a prescription-only medication. So there has been long-term research carried out on them, but we don't know really what's going to happen. And if you lose rapid weight very, very fast, it's very difficult to maintain that and to keep that off. So then the question arises, are there other methods that may be more beneficial in the long term? For example, there are technologies out there that are non-invasive technologies that basically shrink the fat cell and they make that fat cell function in an optimized manner. So that could be a method such as fat cell management, which may be more beneficial long term as opposed to prescription.
Was that like a herbal pill, or is it a machine that does that?
It's a machine, yes. So it's a really cool green laser, which
sounds very Star Trek.
It is. It's very futuristic, but you've got to think technology has developed so much. So
what happens? Imagine we've got to get rid of this little mini spare tyre that I've got. I lie down in a dark room.
Yes.
Lights
off,
into a machine? Do I get it like MRI or something?
No, not that high tech.
Am I going into a cave?
No. So basically, what happens is you lie on a treatment bed. There's this. It looks like a green dome, and it's got 10 little laser beams on there, and that's then positioned over the area that you would like to reduce.
Right.
And what these laser beams do is they create a little, let's say, transitory pore in the membrane of the fat cell.
Right.
And by doing that, that allows the fat to come out. So by doing that, you're targeting areas in a more controlled manner, because even when you go on a weight loss plan, for example, you can't tell your body where fat is going to come off. The body releases fat from areas that it wants to, and it keeps a hold of it in more stubborn areas.
Right.
So that's when more advanced technological advancements can play a really big role.
Do you think it sends out the wrong message that the government are thinking of prescribing Ozempic to unemployed people to get them healthy and back to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's various reasons as to why somebody doesn't want to work. I think the fact that they're overweight is just a very small aspect of it. I don't necessarily think that if they do lose weight, then all of a sudden they're going to go and, look for work. I think there's a lot more implications to that. However, being overweight is a massive, massive issue in the UK. Being overweight and obese is a huge, huge problem that the government really does need to tackle.
Is a jab the answer? I mean, whatever happened to eating a good diet and taking a bit of exercise?
People are lazy. This is the problem. And especially coming outside of the pandemic, people don't want to move. They don't want to eat healthily. And we've got to think, when it comes to healthy food, eating healthy is quite expensive. It's not that accessible.
But also, if you look at these products like Ozempic, I understand the statistics are that you could perhaps lose sort of 15 to 20% of your body fat, which is quite a lot, but not exactly game-changing, is it? And the big concern is that for a lot of people, they have to stay on it for life. Is that a solution?
Again, because it is a medication.
£200 a month forever?
Exactly. And it's a medication. It's like any medication. What happens if you stay on a medication for so long? There could be so many underlying health problems that can lead to.
Well, some people get quite nauseous on it, don't they?
Yes. They get nauseous. They're constantly sick. They can't eat certain foods. Like, for example, if dairy, cheese, etc., that can become a big problem, which is why, if you are on Ozempic, you need to be overseen by a medical professional who regularly checks in with you.
You're obviously worried about the fact that it's unregulated sort of outfits that are flogging these things, but you'll never stop that, will you?
Well, unless the government does something to regulate the medical aesthetics industry, it's not going to stop anytime soon. Over the last 2 months, we've had 2 deaths from non-licensed healthcare practitioners that have led to deaths. So it's a question of how many deaths need to happen in the UK before the government actually start taking the medical aesthetics industry seriously.
Indeed. A couple of upsides to this medication. I've probably got viewers and listeners who have taken things like the Ozempic and actually found it a game changer. A good friend of mine, journalist Alison Pearson, said that she's taken such medication. It really helped her. So there are positive stories about this approach. And also, some suggestion that drug addicts can get help from this medication. Is that true?
Yeah, again, because it's all new research, it's all coming to light, and there's new data, there's new case studies constantly taking place. So all of this, let's say in another 12 months, will become a lot more apparent.
What about the more invasive solution, such as the gastric band?
Yeah, well, I think...
Is that better than a jab?
No, but not necessarily. It depends on the patient, the underlying health implications that they have. But I think with the likes of semaglutide injections, so that's like Ozempic, Wegovy, Saxenda, Mounjaro, they have replaced the need...
Mounjaro.
Yeah, that's the one. They've replaced the need for such invasive procedures, such as surgical treatments, because you've got to think with surgery, there's a lot of downtime associated with that as well.
I mean, isn't this the pharmaceutical industry just cashing in?
Yes,
I mean... the pharmaceutical industry, because I don't.
Well, if you look at Novo Nordisk, that obviously manufacture Ozempic, they've recorded world record-breaking profits since it was introduced. So, you know.
Now, listen, let's get a plug-in for all of your... Well, you've got a podcast and you've got a website as well. So what's your podcast called?
So my podcast is called The Late Late Aesthetics Show, and I have surgeons on there, industry-leading doctors, industry-leading nurses, and they all educate the general public about what's good and what's not.
Oh, that's brilliant. And your website?
VLaesthetics.co.uk.
That's great. And a quick look at me. I mean, obviously, it's a bit of a job of work, isn't it? Where do you start with this? How do you cosmetically improve 6'5" of 50-year-old man?
Well, we can reverse internal ageing now. So I always think if ageing starts on a cellular level, so if we can reverse our internal ageing, then we're going to live longer and we're going to live a lot healthier.
Oh, how did you know that my internals were so old? But you're absolutely right. Listen, thank you so much. A real treat to meet you, Vanessa Lana Brown.
Thank you.
Come and see us again soon. Next up, my Mark Meets guest has made an extraordinary film about Queen Elizabeth and King Charles's interest in the supernatural and UFOs. I'll be uncovering some dark royal secrets next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French.
We should.
Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. A kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So.
And it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, it's time for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets, and my guest tonight grew up in Huddersfield, where he studied classical music. But after forming his own indie band, the Pocket Gods, the band has released 5,000 songs on 76 albums, achieving millions of streams and nabbing a number of Guinness World Records. And if that wasn't enough, in recent years, Mark Christopher Lee decided to start writing and making films exploring his love of UFOs and the paranormal. His latest documentary, King of UFOs, explores the British royal family's interest in UFOs and the unexplained. Appealing to both UFO believers and fans of The Crown, King of UFOs is out now and streaming on Amazon Prime. Mark, Chris... Oh, I think we've got a clip. Thank you, James. Let's do it.
There were dome-like projections around each of the pilots. Charles and his engineering crew were familiar with the craft.
So many sighting reports.
What are they here for? What's Charles going to respond to?
Their interest is based on factual knowledge that they've been able to get access to that we don't.
It would alarm people. My God, these things are dangerous. It's a bit like a Pandora's box. If we took the lid off and looked inside, we'd never be the same again.
Wow, King of UFOs is out now and streaming, as I've said, on Amazon Prime. Mark Christopher Lee, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thank you, Mark, for having me on. It's much appreciated.
Well, that's great. Really, a lot of excitement, publicity around this new documentary film. When did this connection between UFOs and the unexplained and the royal family begin?
Right, it was last year. The chap you saw at the end of the trailer is retired CID officer John Hanson, and he's got this amazing UFO archive in Stratford-upon-Avon. He's literally got tens of thousands of documents of UFO sightings from pilots, etc., and people, members of the public. But he's also got letters from the Queen and Prince Philip about his UFO books and their fascination with it. And I think, wow, look at this, the Queen's into UFOs.
So do we know whether she reached out to them or did they reach out to her?
No, John sent his books to her and Prince Philip, but they responded and added them to their own UFO and paranormal collection, which I thought was interesting.
So it's your understanding that Queen Elizabeth II had an archive or a collection of UFO sightings?
Yeah.
And that it was a subject of keen interest to her?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely fascinating. And do we know what may have sparked that interest? Was it simply these books written by this author?
No, I think it goes back quite a long way, because we go back to Lord Mountbatten, and he allegedly had a UFO land on his estate in Broadlands. And this is documented in his archives. He didn't see it himself, but his worker, labourer, Fred Briggs, detailed this craft landing at Broadlands and took a description, did a drawing, and Mountbatten actually signed a statement testifying to Briggs's honesty, basically. So Mountbatten was massively interested. That kind of went on to Prince Philip, who, in the 50s was massively into UFOs and used to act, because politically it was sensitive, through his equerry, Sir Peter Horsley. And he used to go out and get details of the latest sightings, subscribe to Flying Saucer Review for him, and even nearly met up with an alien called Janus in a flat in Chelsea. Sir Peter Horsley was meeting with his character at his flat, and he was called Janus, and Sir Peter Horsley said this character could telepathically communicate with him, and it was really, really bizarre, and he really wanted to meet Prince Philip. And luckily it didn't happen, because it probably turns out that Janus was a Russian spy.
Yeah.
But it was just a fascinating story. And this is all documented in Sir Peter Horsley's autobiography. So it's all the cases in the film are documented. It's not just stuff that's made up. It's, it's proper evidence for it.
And given that the Queen was our head of state, might she have been privy to more information about the paranormal and about UFOs than the rest of us?
I think so. And in the film, we interview Richard Felix, who's a paranormal historian. And he says, look at the Vatican archives. There's supposed to be secrets in there. We've got our own in Windsor Castle.
And I understand that the Queen's interest and Prince Philip's interest in UFOs was passed on to Charles, who is now our king.
Yeah, absolutely. Charles has had his own sighting. I couldn't give details in the film because my source wouldn't come forward. But
so you've got a source that suggests that King Charles has seen a UFO.
Yeah. And also, in the film, we have an interview with a Canadian diver called Dan Costello, who claims to have seen Prince Charles fly a prototype UFO in Canada in 1976. I'm not saying it's extraterrestrial, but it was a weird craft. It had dual rotor blades and would just hang in the sky, and the blades would stop. It would be silent, and there'd be electromagnetic hum coming from it.
This is a suggestion that a young Prince Charles, who would have been the Prince of Wales at that point, I think, was flying potentially some kind of unidentified flying object in 1973.
1975.
75.
In Nova Scotia. And he was...
Do we know what the circumstances would be? I mean, would this have been a prototype aircraft from Boeing or some other manufacturer?
Sikorsky, possibly.
The Royal Air Force?
Sikorsky. It was a modified Sikorsky. That's what we've been told.
What is a Sikorsky?
It's a helicopter. It's a dual-rotor helicopter.
So then it's adapted. Not... Because what is a UFO?
Well, this is it. The whole point we included this story is not... Because it's a UFO doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
It could be our technology.
So this might have been man-made, but not a conventional aircraft.
Precisely.
Fascinating. And do we know whether Charles maintains an interest in the paranormal or UFOs? I mean, he's famous for talking to plants, of course.
Yeah, I mean, he did. He was heavily influenced by Lauren van der Post, the Afrikaners, and he was very much into synchronicity, Carl Jung, the collective unconsciousness. I'm sure that was passed on to Prince Charles, so I'm sure he's got those beliefs now. And I've written to him at the palace, you know, hoping for an invitation to talk about these things.
What do you say to those watching or listening who think that if you're interested in UFOs, that you're bonkers, that you're mad, that you're a conspiracy theorist?
Well, the Queen, the Prince Philip, they weren't conspiracy theorists. They were very, you know, serious people. And also, you know, the issue I have with this is, like, we don't take them seriously in this country. In America, we have decorated pilots giving evidence under oath at Congress about them engaging with craft that are doing impossible manoeuvres. I mean, they're taking it very seriously in America. When we're not taking it seriously, it's still a bit of a jokey issue.
Are governments covering up the truth, whether here or in the United States?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Really? Yeah. And because, I mean, you sort of got the likes of Joe Rogan openly talking about UFOs now. Why do you think they would cover it up? Why can't we know the truth?
There's two possible reasons. One is embarrassment, that there's things in our sky that are here, they don't know what they are. So why would they reveal that to us? The other thing is they know the truth and it's too scary to release.
Briefly, have you seen a UFO yourself?
I have, yes.
When?
After filming my latest film at Rendlesham in Suffolk, I came back home and saw something in the garden. My wife spotted it first. I put it on YouTube. There's a clip on there. It's unidentified. I don't know what it was.
I tell you, and you hadn't had a drink?
No, I don't drink.
There you go. It's cold. Stone sober. My thanks to Mark Christopher Lee, whose new film, King of UFOs, is streaming on Amazon Prime. Listen, folks, strap yourselves in for my take at 10. Woke madness in the world of football. Don't go anywhere.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west. So we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Happy Saturday, one and all. It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In My Take at 10, a 17-year-old girl with suspected autism faces a 3-month ban from ladies amateur football for asking a biologically male opponent, "Are you a man?" Well, plot spoiler, he is. I'll be giving you more details of this shocking story in just a moment. You will not believe your ears, and I'm not pulling my punches. Also tonight, as he pauses his cancer treatment to represent Britain down under, can King Charles save the monarchy in Australia? Plus, is Prince Andrew about to get turfed out of his Royal Lodge accommodation? And is the US election now in the bag for Donald Trump? I'll be asking my top US insider. Plus, tomorrow's front pages and tonight's panel, business and geopolitics commentator Dr. Roger Giewolb, author and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and broadcaster and model Precious Muir. Women's amateur football goes total woke. That's my take at 10 in 2 minutes' time after the headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Well, Zayn Malik has announced he'll reschedule his US tour after the heartbreaking death of his former One Direction bandmate Liam Payne. Meanwhile, Liam's sister says she doesn't feel this world was good enough or kind enough to him in a heartfelt tribute to her late brother. Liam's father has visited the hotel in Argentina where his son died as he read tributes left for the star outside the Casa Sur hotel. He was watched on by a crowd of mourners. Officials confirmed a search of the hotel found narcotics, alcohol and destroyed objects in the room. Fans laid flowers, played songs and lit candles in tribute to Liam on the Kiel Wharf Bridge at Royal Albert Dock in Liverpool today. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has pressed Israel to allow more aid into Gaza and use the death of Hamas's leader as an opportunity to stop the fighting in a call with the country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Sir Keir Starmer also said he was alarmed to hear about the drone launched towards Netanyahu's home this morning. The Israeli leader was not in the house or in the vicinity at the time of the attack, and the IDF says nobody was injured. Fired from neighbouring Lebanon, 3 drones were aimed at the town Saysahir, with 1 hitting a building and 2 intercepted. Iran's supreme leader earlier said the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar will not halt its axis of resilience. The Prime Minister has insisted the government will stick to its manifesto pledges amid reports the Chancellor may extend a freeze on tax thresholds. The Financial Times writes Rachel Reeves could raise £7 billion in revenue if the freeze is extended until 2028. It could help plug some of the £40 billion gap in the Treasury's finances with a hope of avoiding a return to austerity. But critics say it'll break the Labour promise not to raise taxes. The wife of a Conservative councillor who was jailed for 31 months after an online rant about migrants on the day of the Southport attacks will reportedly appeal against her sentence. Lucy Connolly, who's married to West Northamptonshire councillor Raymond Connolly, said in an X post in July, "Mass deportation now set fire to all of the hotels with them inside." She went on to say, "If that makes me racist, so be it." The 41-year-old former childminder was sentenced after pleading guilty to a charge of inciting racial hatred. The Mail Online has reported Connolly's husband said she plans to appeal against that sentence, which he believes was political. The King and Queen will begin their landmark tour of Australia by joining a church congregation for Sunday service. His Majesty King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived in Sydney yesterday evening for their 6th-day visit to the Commonwealth nation to celebrate its people, culture and heritage. Sydney Opera House was lit up with a rolling 4-minute projection of images of the King and Camilla to mark the monarch's first visit to Australia as King. And could this be the comfiest train seat in the country? Well, that's what the company making the chairs for the HS2 rail service is hoping. Passengers will be treated to 87 centimetres of legroom, 2 plug sockets and reclining features. After backlash against some existing services where passengers compared seats to ironing boards, rail leaders say they hope to rectify the industry's pretty bad job designing seats. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Busy show tonight. It is Saturday, so you have my permission to crack open a bottle of beer or a cold glass of wine, or maybe fire up the kettle and tear open those custard creams. A few big questions tonight as he pauses his cancer treatment to represent Britain down under. Can King Charles save the monarchy in Australia? Is Prince Andrew about to be made homeless? And is the US election in the bag for Donald Trump? I'll be asking my top US insider. But first, my take at 10. Good evening. It takes a lot to shock me these days, but here we go. The Telegraph newspaper report that a 17-year-old girl, an amateur footballer with suspected autism, faces a 12-match ban for asking an adult transgender opponent, that's a male, playing football in a women's team, "Are you a man?" The charges, we're told, breach the FA Code of Conduct. Do they indeed? This poor girl, who obviously has a passion for football and is trying to keep herself fit and healthy and enjoys competing with other women, may be kept off the field for 3 months for offending someone born male and who, it's reported, still has a beard. God knows what else they're packing, more than shin pads, I fear. This young woman raised concerns about the risk of getting hurt as a 17-year-old girl playing against a biological male who was bigger than her and very physical as a player, adding that she did not want to get dangerously injured right before the start of a new season. The team was charged after a complaint was made about her via Kick It Out, an England-based anti-discrimination watchdog, which has done great work against the evil of racism, but which shouldn't be sacrificing the integrity or safety of women's football in the name of inclusion. The girl has had to deny being transphobic. Of course she has. She's currently being tested for autism. But why has that even been brought into this conversation? It's not relevant. I suppose the implication is sometimes people with autism struggle to filter out their thoughts. Well, that's a good thing, because there is nothing that this young woman said that was wrong. Autistic or not, her honesty and courage shames the rest of us, who all too often keep quiet about these things, wanting to stay out of trouble and hoping that all of this blows over, which, of course, it won't. Now, I have trans friends who deserve support, love, respect and equality under the law. There are trans people. They are precious human beings like everyone else who feel that they are in the wrong body. It's not easy. But the facts don't care about your feelings. And the anti-scientific mantra now that men are women and that women are men has serious legal and practical implications, one of which is setting back women's rights by 100 years. And aside from the philosophical arguments, it's incredibly dangerous for biological men to participate in women's sports, and it's deeply unfair too, as records are smashed and real women who have often been training and making huge sacrifices since they were little girls, now being denied trophies, medals and places on the podium, making way for a biological male who now feels like a woman. It's like the ECB, who are going to allow biological men who identify as female to play in amateur women's cricket. Would you want a biological male launching a rock-hard leather cricket ball in your daughter or sister's direction? Someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to get killed. At the heart of all of this is the malignant lie that you can change your sex, something handsomely dismissed by the world-leading fertility expert Professor Robert Winston on the BBC's Question Time programme.
I'll say this categorically, that you cannot change your sex. Your sex actually is there in every single cell in the body. You have a chromosomal sex, you have genetic sex, you have hormonal sex, you have all sorts of different kinds of psychological, brain sex, they're all different.
This isn't a trivial issue. This isn't a marginal issue. This is not a confected culture war. This is not a right-wing conspiracy. This is about safety, fairness, common sense and the truth. This is women, once again, being dominated and bullied by men. The oldest story in history. The only balls on a women's football pitch should be the ones you kick. Shocking story. A 17-year-old girl who suspected of having autism has said to a biological male playing in a women's team, "Are you a man?" Well, plot spoiler, it is a biological male. Her question was valid. She faces a 3-month ban from the woke football authorities. I'm not having it. I've rarely been this angry, but let me know if you disagree. gbnews.com/your say. OK, folks, let's hear from tonight's top pundits. Business and geopolitics commentator, Dr. Roger Gewolb, author and academic, Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and broadcaster and model, Precious Muir. Precious, your reaction to a possible 3-month ban for a woman saying to a man, "Are you a man?"
I think it's, I think it's quite sad that this is the world that we're living in right now. I think it's a fair question. I think it's a fair question from this young woman because it's a contact sport. And when it's a contact sport like, you know, football, boxing, whatever, you need to have those kind of questions asked. And if she said it to this individual, maybe in a private setting, I'm not sure her delivery and how she said it, was it in the pitch in front of everyone? I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, she has the right to answer those questions, ask those questions, definitely.
OK, I mean, Lisa, the bottom line is that we've got a changing world now. There are people who have body dysmorphia. Trans people are some of the most victimised in our society. And all the football authorities are trying to do is make sure that people who have body dysmorphia, who have gender dysphoria, actually, you know, feel included and can belong.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that I would say that most of us do not want to go out and upset people. We don't want to offend them. We don't want to misgender. That's not what we're aiming to do. But I do think when it comes to, as Precious has said, contact sports, this does have to be treated differently because of safety. I follow on social media Sharon Davis, who has done a fantastic campaign.
Olympic swimmer.
Yeah, and she's done a fantastic campaign.
She's not an Olympic swinger, by the way.
Olympic swimmer. And she...
I didn't know about her private life.
But, well, she... Oh, Mark.
I've thrown you off course now.
She's done it again.
But she's a hero for women's rights.
She is, and she really... And she makes the point. She does, as you've said, is she plays the ball and not the man or the woman. She talks about women's safety, fairness, and also women's opportunities within sport. And so she plays... So I don't know how that is unreasonable. I don't know in any sort of terms that would be unreasonable. So that means, you know, if you are a transgender woman and you're playing in a team with biological women, I don't... You know, if one of those women asks you a question about that, I'm not sure why that would be insulting.
Is there a question of fairness as well? Because you mentioned the safety, but what about medals and trophies?
Fairness,
and records.
Yeah, fair and a fairness. You know, it's hard enough for women. It's hard enough for us.
Yeah, we don't get enough. You know, we don't get enough awards as it is, and then you've got men who have transitioned now into women, taking the awards away from women. I just don't see this happening the other way around. How many born females are now in the NBA? Please tell me. There is none. How many born females who have transitioned to males are in athletic sports?
Or in the Premier League?
Where are they? Where are they?
Indeed.
It doesn't exist.
Although, Roger, if you said to somebody that's a trans woman that's transitioned from being a biological male to a woman, which is, you know, recognised under UK equality laws, perhaps it's deeply offensive and very upsetting for that person to be approached and asked, are you a male?
I think it depends on the person. I actually have a relative who's in exactly that position. I think it depends on the person, their sensitivities, but I think this whole topic, this whole conversation is nonsense because it's not what she asked, it's not the response, it's solely the irresponsibility of the football authorities to put that woman, that trans male, into this particular sporting situation. It's a question of where you draw the line. They wouldn't put this woman into a Thai kickboxing match.
They might do.
They might do. But I mean, the point is,
we saw women's boxing impacting
women's boxing, but you have to draw the line.
Jiu-jitsu, they're in there.
Yeah, but you have to draw the line somewhere. Otherwise, women are going to get very hurt by stronger women who were males before. That's the fault here, not any of the rest of this.
Well, that's my great concern, is that someone's going to get hurt. Someone is going to get killed. It's time now for the Great British Giveaway, and the clock is ticking on getting your entry in, as lines are closing on Friday. Make sure that you don't miss out on your chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash. Here are the details. OK, folks, as he pauses his cancer treatment to represent Britain down under, can King Charles save the monarchy in Australia? Plus, is Prince Andrew about to get turfed out of his Royal Lodge accommodation? And is the US election in the bag for Donald Trump? I'll be asking my top US insider next.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My kingdom for a voice. Scientists have, I can't believe this story, scientists have incredibly recreated the voice of Richard III using both his skull shape and a knowledge of medieval speech patterns. Me neither. The result is that the king, who was famously killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, would have spoken in English close to that of a man from modern-day Yorkshire or Somerset. Let's take a listen.
The sun shines with no less light and splendour, nor does it suffer any diminution of its strength.
Let's discuss this further with Yvonne Morley-Chisholm, the voice coach behind the project, who spent 10 years researching how the monarch would have sounded. Yvonne, you can probably see from my face, I have no idea how this works. Can you enlighten me as to what all this is about?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dawn. So yes, I had a mad idea 10 years ago. I normally work with actors where we have a recording of a historical person, and we do something called vocal profiling to train the actor who's going to be performing on stage or screen to move their tongue tip, their jaw, their lips, everything, and get behind the personality of who they're playing. We obviously have quite a lot of that missing from Richard. We don't have a recording of him, but I wondered how far we could go. And a key player in this has been and is Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who over a decade ago created his face, first of all, from his skull. Now, on the day we, as Shakespeare would say, shuffle off our mortal coil, every little dent and dimple in the bones says how fit and strong the muscles were. So I thought, OK, we know what his face could do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, the King and Queen in Australia amidst calls for a republic. Could this be a final farewell tour? He's got his work cut out, hasn't he, winning over the Australians?
You know what? King Charles has proven this year that he is capable of adapting to any situation with grace and will remain flexible and avoid conflict when it comes to the idea of republic referendums. Even the Prime Minister, who has previously said Australia should have an Australian as head of state, recently indicated that a referendum was not a priority. And if you look at pictures of him with King Charles, he is grinning ear to ear. He is thrilled to be in his company. Additionally, Buckingham Palace has stressed, like his mother before him, it has always been the case that His Majesty the King feels that it is a matter for the Australian people. So I think he's being very gracious and humble in this instance.
Indeed, the British monarchy has never done the hard sell. King Charles proving to be a really gifted diplomat, isn't he?
He is. No, I mean, also, it just seems to me that this is something he really wants, and he has waited all of his life for it. I've heard he's taken 2 doctors on this trip with him, but to sacrifice to sacrifice his healing, to ensure that he's there to represent the country, to ensure that he feels like he's doing his job. I think that speaks volumes.
Most definitely. He is proving to be a wonderful diplomat. Will he be diplomatic with his brother, Prince Andrew, over Andrew's accommodation at the rather posh Royal Lodge?
I mean, this is the saga that never ends. Prince Andrew has been described as a prisoner of his own pride when it comes to Royal Lodge. I mean, my personal prediction is that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. But there are reports that Prince Andrew is in jeopardy of violating the Crown Estate's lease rules, which specify that he has to make repairs on Royal Lodge. He has to be in the financial position to continue to make those repairs. Otherwise, they can terminate his agreement. And the Express is reporting that the Duke has been given up to the end of the year to prove that he has the financial resources to do that. That same source says it's the closest Andrew has come to being evicted since he was asked to step down as a working royal 2 years ago.
Do we know how financially affluent Prince Andrew is?
I mean, much less off now that Jeffrey Epstein's gone. Jeffrey Epstein was very keen to give him a loan every once in a while. So I'm not sure where his income source is these days. And I'm sure that is something that he struggles with mentally.
And what do we know of Andrew and Charles's relationship? Do they get on?
I think that they get on as much as they always have. They were never close as far as aside from the difference in ages, I think that they've always had much different objectives in life. The king had the weight of being the future king on his shoulders, and Prince Andrew was happy being the Playboy prince. And I just don't think that they have a lot in common. I think that they love each other as much as you do when you have a sibling. But I think that the king's ultimate objective is the future of the monarchy.
Meanwhile, Kinsey, the race for the White House is affecting weddings in the United States. How so?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's been an increase in the popularity of fall weddings in the States, which could potentially end in smackdowns thanks to our contentious election season. The New York Times, which is widely regarded for its coverage of wedding culture and evolving traditions, has seen an increase in couples opting not to serve alcohol at their weddings. Count me out. Fall wedding couples are displaying no politics signs around the venue to ensure that there is no fighting throughout the festivities.
And that's because of how divided America is in relation to Trump versus Harris.
Absolutely. And we saw, one party challenge the other party last year. Imagine November 6th, you've got a wedding going on and your candidate didn't win. Imagine how chaotic that could be.
Indeed. Now, is it Trump's to lose at this stage? Has he got the big mo, that political momentum which is so highly valued?
I think his chances are up today, but they could be down tomorrow. I think Kamala Harris's interview with Bret Baier was disastrous.
On Fox News.
You and I might look at that and go, what a nightmare. But I'd argue that people on the left have looked at it and said an ambush. So again, we're so split down the middle that common sense is no longer common anymore. And while they didn't listen to her answers, they were just resentful over the fact that Bret Baier was asking her some of those tough questions that no one had asked her before. So today, Trump, might be in the lead by an inch, but tomorrow Kamala could come out, 3 inches further.
Speaking of 3 inches, what's happened to Al Pacino's manhood?
Oh, my God. He said he is haunted by the thought of a childhood injury to his penis in his newly released memoir, Sonny Boy. This accident occurred when he was living in New York. He was a 10-year-old boy. He writes, I was walking on a thin iron fence doing my tightrope dance. It had been raining all morning. And sure enough, I slipped and fell, and the iron bar hit me directly between my legs. Why do Al Pacino and Prince Harry think we want more information on their wieners? I don't. I'm done, guys.
Yeah, I'm done as well. What a load of balls. Listen, Kinsey, we'll catch up next week. My thanks to the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Check out her brilliant website, To Die For Daily, and her podcast of the same name. Next up, tomorrow's front pages with full pundit reaction. See you in 2.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west as we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10:30, so time for tomorrow's front pages. And we go straight to the Observer. Reeves will tax businesses to plug £9 billion gap in NHS funds. End smacking now, says children's watchdog. Mail on Sunday. A new nightmare for Starmer as tax rate budget looms. Poll reveals Conservatives ahead on family finances. For first time since Boris was in number 10. Voters, we don't trust Labour with our money. Also, picture exclusive in the Mail on Sunday. Liam's horse therapy with Prince Harry's polo rival. Sunday Mirror now. Swifties have ruined my pub, says Jeffrey Archer. And Liam Payne, sister's agony. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. Weekend, income tax set to rise for millions past 2028. Rachel Reeves is expected to freeze income tax thresholds again in a move which will raise billions of pounds and leave millions of workers paying more. The Chancellor believes that her plan won't break Labour's manifesto promise to not raise taxes, while extending freeze could raise an extra £7 billion a year. How the killing of the Hamas leader will change the Middle East. And does your partner love clutter? Good question for Mrs. Dolan, that one. The Sunday Telegraph now. Benefit fraudsters face state raid on bank accounts. Generic, I will tear up unconservative Climate Change Act. And millions to be given NHS smartwatches. A 10-year plan to save the health service starts with technological transformation. And The Sun on Sunday. Salute to tragic One Direction star. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Heartbreaking tribute from Liam Payne's sister, Ruth. Those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from tonight's top pundits. We have business and geopolitics commentator Dr. Roger Gewolb, author and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, and broadcaster and model Precious Muir. And really, Lisa, there's only one story in town, and that is the looming budget at the end of the month. Can you explain to us, to my viewers and listeners, why the freezing of the tax income threshold is effectively a tax rise?
It's not just a tax rise. So what will happen is, rather than the government thinking about inflation and then rising the sort of limit that we get taxed on.
Yeah, you have a tax-free allowance, and normally it goes up 12,500. It normally goes up a certain amount every year.
Yeah, and particularly over the last couple of years where we've had inflation, you would think that it's gone up, but obviously the last government, they froze it. Rachel Reeves is going to freeze it again. This is incredibly regressive. This is a regressive tax.
Because it brings more people into taxation and the higher rates.
At the bottom. So it brings more people into tax. So it means more pensioners will be brought in. It means people on part-time wages will be brought in. And it means that people on lower wages. It's incredibly regressive. It's not going to be... It's the idea that it's the people with the broadest shoulders are going to pay for, you know, the issues with financial issues we've got. It's not. It's going to be the poorest people again.
Roger, this is only a problem because of the outrageous mess that this government was left by the Conservatives.
I don't think that this government was left with a surprise mess by the Conservatives. There's no way you can be the shadow party for 14 years and not know what's going on. The £22 billion black hole is fiction, as far as I'm concerned.
The deficit is not, is it, though? Running a deficit, which means more goes out than comes in every month.
The £40 billion deficit that needs to be filled, which includes that so-called black hole, is because they're spending so much in their plans. But look, I mean, all of this is unreal. It all comes down to something. I think that Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, and I are the only people in the country that are talking about this. The income tax threshold, which you two were just speaking about, is £12,570. You don't pay tax if you earn less than that. It would, as you've just intimated, should increase every year with inflation. It's been frozen so it doesn't increase. It creates what's called fiscal drag. It drags more and more people into it as inflation brings earnings up and people. Now, to move that tax threshold from £12,570 to $20,000 a year would cost $40 billion a year. The Reform Party, the only other people besides myself who've been screaming for the last 2 years that we are paying £40 billion in interest to the banks, who really desperately need the money after 14 interest rate rises. We're paying £40 billion in interest to the banks on the phony printed trillions that the Bank of England printed. We are just about the only country in the world that does that. Switzerland doesn't do it. The European Central Bank doesn't do it. We don't need to be paying money from our left pocket to our right pocket and claim that it's part of the national debt.
So you'd make the first...
If they didn't pay that interest, there would be £40 to move the tax threshold
40 billion.
And help tens of millions of people, especially the lower paid and the pensioners. Okay. I couldn't believe the Tories wouldn't do it. And I'm absolutely amazed that Labour isn't going to do it either.
And you're talking about ensuring that anyone earning less than £20,000 a year pays no income tax?
Correct.
All right, but how does that boost the nation's coffers?
That doesn't boost the nation's coffers, but that eases the cost of living crisis. It increases productivity. It saves 500,000 British businesses from going out of business and going to the wall, which they're about to do. And it combats the dozen of anti-growth measures that this new government is putting in place.
OK. Well, Precious, this is quite a devastating headline in the Mail on Sunday. Voters, we don't trust Labour with our money. Do you?
I think a lot of people feel like the fact that they voted for Labour and they seem to be getting Conservative policies is probably the reason why they're feeling kind of down about the whole Labour situation. I think they're not looking into the things that they were actually promising while they were trying to be elected. And they're kind of reversing and going backwards in that regard. They're not increasing the things that they're supposed to be increasing to help the economy. It just seems like they're just hindering it by just keeping it where it is. And I don't know who is actually, in Keir Starmer's ear, but obviously he's doing this.
Lord Ali, I think.
I feel like someone who's got a key to the number 10 is probably giving him a few things.
If only they
ear.
were keeping it where it is, they're going to make it even worse.
Right.
Yeah.
They should be making the changes that... The reason why they were elected and people voted for Labour is because they wanted change. And, and at this present time, in this very moment, they're not doing what they said they were
Briefly,
going to.
Precious, is it dishonest of Labour to say we won't increase taxes? That would be national insurance, income tax and VAT, but freezing the threshold, which many people consider a tax hike indirectly by the back door?
Well, I think politicians always say these kind of things to get what they want, and this is why it's always coming back, to hit them in the face. I mean, they've obviously said certain things, and it's just not, they're not following through on these things.
Well, let's get to the Sunday Mirror and indeed, actually, the Sun on Sunday as well. The Sun on Sunday have got the exclusive, and it's salute to tragic One Direction star. The headline, "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." Heartbreaking tribute from Liam Payne's sister, Ruth. Such a sad story, Lisa, and there you go. These two had a very close relationship, but she wasn't able to help her own brother.
No, and, anyone who has got addiction in their family, I've had addiction in my family, you know that you are pretty helpless against that. Addiction it's an illness. It's a real illness, and actually you can't save people. And I'm not sure, Liam Payne has obviously got addictions. I'm not sure perhaps his family could have helped him.
Inevitably, they will ask whether they could have done more.
Of course.
Inevitably, they will, which they shouldn't. They may blame themselves.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. But as we were speaking earlier, Liam Payne is in an industry that has been sort of well-known and well-practised at not protecting people.
Indeed. I mean, earlier, Neil Hamilton, Roger, suggested that it is a tragic story, but at this point, you're 31 years of age and the responsibility lies with you. What do you think about that?
Well, ultimately, the responsibility does lie with you. The pressures are tremendous, but something that we haven't mentioned in all this tonight is that if you do live in this world, you actually live two lives. I mean, there are people who regard you as a figure that you're not. You're not a real person. I mean, I have people come up to me and say, "Oh, I saw you on GB News," and I have these long conversations, and they're speaking to me as if I'm some character in their mind, and I answer them and say something, and it doesn't register. They're still talking about who they think said this on TV that they're addressing. So you also have to, the higher you go, especially with the paparazzi and the rest, live kind of a double life or a false life, and that's a tremendous pressure. I mean, I've had arguments with people who've approached me in the street and started arguing with me about things that I never said, that they thought I said.
On this channel or other broadcast networks?
Numerous ones.
And what happens? Do you get stopped in Tesco in the vegetable aisle, or...?
I have been hit with radishes at times.
In the wine section?
I've been hit. I've been pelted with radishes.
Oh, dear.
I've had people buy me bottles of wine to take home and ask for my autograph. It's very nice, but you're actually a different character.
Yeah.
And somebody at Liam Payne's level has to live with that, and it's really tough.
Precious Muir, do you think that this tragedy could damage Simon Cowell's reputation, given that he was the great impresario who managed One Direction's career? And there are many people not specifically blaming Simon Cowell, but just pointing out that the industry don't do enough to support their talent.
I don't think it will really be a huge reflection on Simon Cowell. I think he's dealing with it. He's not dealing with it very well at the moment. I think he pulled out in one of his shows because he just mentally wasn't able to talk about it or just be, present at what he had to do in his position of work. But for me, I feel like we are all guilty as human beings that we don't reach out to our loved ones. We don't keep in contact with people we know, friends and family, and we all have to take accountability in that fact and probably check in on people a lot more. And I feel like he probably didn't have a lot of people who knew about maybe his drug addiction or the things that he was dealing with mentally. So he had to kind of deal with them himself. And the industry, with all the pressure that he was going under, I think he was just dropped by his record label, I think.
Correct, yeah.
So all of these things are weighing on somebody who is a public figure. And just like, was said before, when you are a public figure, people in the general public think that you belong to them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So they come up to you, and I get it all the time myself. They think that you belong to them, your story, your life, everything about you, because it's online, because it's in the press, because they know about you. They watched you on TV and they're like, I know Precious. I'm like, well, we don't know each other. I appreciate your love and support online, and I love that you watch my TV show, but I'm still a human being, and I need to separate those two things because people do try to, overstep the mark. And this is what happened to Liam Payne. He's at the hotel and he was being approached by every single fan going. And that could have also led him to just not be in that mental headspace where he needed to just have some time alone to think about all the things that he's dealing with. I mean, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure for someone so young.
That's what I wanted to say. And I wish I could be a geopolitics expert and model like Precious.
Most definitely. I was just saying how many times, though, because, we've had Amy Winehouse, we've had a number...
Caroline Flack.
George Michael. George Michael.
The list is long.
And like I said earlier, going back to Judy Garland, and every time it's like, perhaps the industry is a bit harsh, or perhaps we don't look after these people. But it doesn't seem like there's always another.
Well, I totally agree. Listen, we've got some really big stories coming up. First of all, the Department of Work and Pensions are considering taking money directly from bank accounts in a benefit fraud crackdown. Are you comfortable with the idea of the government just reaching into your bank account and removing money if you've stolen it? Also, Labour's gender plans could turn parents into criminals. Robert Jenrick looks like he's about to end net zero if he becomes Tory leader. Is that a vote winner? And very, very troubling news, tragic news, in fact. 6 times cycling gold medalist Chris Hoy has revealed that he has terminal cancer. We'll discuss that next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Serving some of the most talked about food in Chelsea, executive head chef of Number 50 Cheney, Ian Smith, has created a range of menus with a hint of the homeland, using the finest British ingredients sourced by trusted suppliers. Ian Smith was head chef at Jason Atherton's Social Eating House and spent time in the kitchens of the Galvin brothers. Ian joins me now to tell more of the story. Tell me about Number 50 Cheney.
Yes, so we are a beautiful restaurant down in the corner of Chelsea on the Embankment with an amazing team. And we are really pride ourselves on, being an affordable luxury that people, really are wanting to return to week in, week out.
What's the view from your restaurant?
We can see the Embankment, the Thames, and Albert Bridge, which is very nice. It's actually lit up. Very romantic.
And tell me a little bit about your philosophy. I was talking there about having a touch of the homeland, British food, seasonal food.
Yes. Yeah, I think, for me, great cooking is, with simplicity, on finest ingredients, cooked with simplicity, and ultimately, there to be enjoyed through... Yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, it starts as a young person's business. You went into it very young, didn't you? 15?
Yes. Yeah, so I was 15. I sat in my parents' bedroom, called the Ritz, the Dorchester and Claridge's, and very luckily, a man on the end of the phone, 21 years ago, sent me on to a college course called the Specialised Chef Scholarship. 3 days later, I had a Ritz stamp letter through the post, and off me and my parents went, and luckily I got on the course.
And how old were you when you got your first responsibility, would you say?
I think the biggest responsibility in my career is today. Leading number 50 Cheney.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, so should we do some front pages? We have got the Sunday Express. Let's take a look at what they are leading with. Blame Keir for winter OAP deaths and crown under the King and the Queen head to Australia. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Sister's message of heartbreak to Liam Payne. Sunday Times now. And leaked papers reveal chaos at the heart of HS2. OK, folks, we'll look at... We've got some really, really sad news, and this is about Sir Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest Olympians. He was diagnosed with cancer some months ago. He went public with that. Well, unfortunately, it's now looking to be terminal, and he has 2 to 4 years to live. We've grabbed that from The Sun on Sunday. It's also being reported in The Telegraph as well. Sir Chris Hoy, one of Britain's greatest ever Olympians, has revealed he has terminal cancer. He's 48. He's a 6-time Olympic cycling gold medalist, and he's been given really bad news by doctors. It was back in February that he said on social media that he'd been diagnosed with cancer and that his treatment was thankfully going well. He added he's optimistic and positive. He's a father of 2, whose children are 10 and 7. And in an interview with the Sunday Times magazine, he said he originally went to the doctor in September of last year. He thought he'd suffered a shoulder strain because he was getting a bit old for lifting heavy weights. It was discovered he had a tumour in his shoulder, and a further scan uncovered that the primary cancer was in his prostate, which had spread to his bones. It's just a devastating diagnosis, Lisa, and a true British national sporting hero who suffers a disease which afflicts too many.
Yeah. I mean, cancer, it goes through all our families, doesn't it?
One in two people.
Yeah, it goes through all our families.
And this is one of the fittest men out there.
And, and I think it's a reminder that we should look after our health as much as we can. We should get checkups. We should go to the doctor. There's so many of us that, I mean, I'm guilty of it, that don't go.
Yeah.
I'll get a pain or whatever, and I think I don't want to trouble them.
Correct.
And I think this sort of brings it back home, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, Precious, this guy has achieved everything you can in professional sport. He's a national hero. He's got a beautiful family, 2 young kids, a happy marriage. And then this devastating diagnosis, just a reminder of how cruel life can be.
It really is. And he's so young. He's got so much more life to live, you know, in that regard. And it's just, it's a devastating thing. You just got to think about what's going to happen, obviously, when that time does come. His family, everyone needs to be supportive of his wife and his kids, because they're the ones that are going to be left behind having to deal with, what's happened.
Well, indeed. Just a little further detail from this interview with the Sunday Times. If you're just joining us, Sir Chris Hoy, the legendary Olympic cyclist, has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He's got 2 to 4 years to live. Writing in the paper, he said there were tumours in his shoulder, pelvis, hip, spine and rib. Wow. And in a memoir, which he's written in the past year, he said, you're told one sentence that some person you'd never met before has just told you, and in the space of one sentence, just a collection of words, and your whole world has fallen apart. Well, that memoir is due next month. And all I can say is I can speak on behalf of all of my viewers and listeners that we send our warmest wishes to Chris Hoy and his family, that he's able to get through this, that he's able to have a very, very excellent quality of life for as long as he's got, which is hopefully as long as is humanly possible. A really great guy. I've interviewed Chris Hoy, a gentleman, a true national sporting hero, a lovely man, and a truly tragic diagnosis. But I do know that Chris Hoy will absolutely eke out every moment that he's got to enjoy with his family and no doubt in his work as well. Roger, a quick line on the Department of Work and Pensions, who are considering directly accessing people's bank accounts if they've stolen money from the state. What's your view on that?
My view on that is the word stolen. If it's that some official in a government office suspects that they've stolen.
Yeah, benefit fraud we're talking about.
Well, if benefit fraud has been committed according to a court of law, okay. But if it's according to Joe Bloggs, who's sitting in an office and thinks so, absolutely not.
You're shaking your head as well, Lisa.
I'm shaking my head because I'm thinking about the sort of recent outrage about train tickets and the way that train companies, they can do this sort of very fast-track prosecutions. Yeah. I do not trust the state with this at all.
Well, they'll get this wrong sometimes, won't they?
Of course they will, and what they will do is they will plunge people into poverty, into debt. But also, again, if anybody is going to do this, it is Keir Starmer. Is there nothing that this man will not do to try and harm working class people?
Well, perhaps what Keir Starmer wants to do is stop people stealing benefits from hard-working taxpayers. Briefly, Precious, if you can.
I think if he's doing the right thing and they're actually accurate and they're finding out the information and doing the research and actually finding out if these people were doing that. Okay. But just going into their bank accounts and taking money that you're not really aware if that was the case.
All right, well,
really not good.
Roger, Precious and Lisa, really enjoyed your company tonight. Thank you for watching at home. Kemi or Baitanok, Kemi or Jenrick, my verdict tomorrow. See you at 9. Headliners is next.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. Storm Ashley is arriving overnight tonight and into the start of tomorrow, bringing some wet and windy weather across much of the UK, with yellow and amber wind warnings in force for many places. Storm Ashley is situated out in the Atlantic at the moment, moving towards the UK with those very tightly packed isobars indicating those strong winds. It will start dry for most of us this evening though, but turning increasingly cloudy from the west. So we see this initial rain band arriving in association with Storm Ashley, and those winds really starting to pick up, particularly along Irish Sea coast, where we could see gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour. It will be quite a mild night, those temperatures holding up in the double figures, particularly in the south and the west due to all that cloud and those strong winds. In association with this rain band, we will see some particularly heavy rainfall, particularly over the high ground of southwest England, Wales, and across northern parts of England and into parts of Scotland as well. Perhaps some brightness to start with across parts of Northern Ireland as that rain band pushes its way eastwards, and the far northeast of Scotland holding on to some of those clearer skies for a time during the morning. However, with those strong winds, that rain band will push its way eastwards relatively quickly as we go through the morning on Sunday, but it's the winds in the far north that do start to pick up. Parts of western Scotland could see gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and in association with some high spring tides, we could see some coastal flooding in places. Turning a little drier across much of England and Wales as we go through the afternoon, and temperatures still above average for the time of year, but definitely feeling cooler than Saturday with those strong southwesterly winds. To start on Monday, still plenty of showers around across parts of Scotland, and it will still be a windy day, though not quite as windy as Sunday afternoon. Dry for much of Wales, southwest England, but in the far southeast we do have this area of rain just pushing its way north and eastwards, bringing some wet weather through the afternoon. Remaining unsettled through the middle part of next week, but temperatures still a little above average for the time of year.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB.
This is the